Well, good morning. Welcome to episode 3 of the Kawasaki KLX 143 big bore pit bike build that one of you is going to win. Links are down in the description below to get yourself entered to win this beast. I've got parts behind me back from Cerakote. Miles over at Canaan Lasers did an incredible job on the Cerakote for this project. I had a few people ask why I chose to outsource the Cerakote for this project instead of doing it myself. Cerakote is a lot of work that requires a lot of time and effort. Miles over at Canaan Lasers is working to break into the moto space, so he offered to help out with this project, and I am in turn promoting his services. So if you are in need of Cerakote work, Miles did a hell of a job on these parts, and I can't wait to start getting this bike assembled. I know these episodes have been spaced out, but the teardown is complete, and we're ready to start building this bike back up into a masterpiece of a pit bike. Go get yourself entered for a chance to win this thing, and let's get it started. Up to this point, the engine build was going beautifully until I realized I forgot to install the Kickstarter stopper plate inside the cases. I probably could have installed it without splitting the cases, but as it turns out, the factory over at Kawasaki forgot to cut threads into these holes. I took a deep breath, split the cases, cut threads into the holes, installed the stopper plate, and got right back to where I was an hour prior. So as I begin to wrap up this engine build, let's talk a little bit about what I've done here. Of course, this thing had to look badass, so a full disassembly was required to get everything coated, but I made some major upgrades to this engine while I had it apart, starting with the BBR forged output shaft and first gear. This shaft is stronger than the OEM shaft and will hold up to the abuse we're going to put it through. It's important to consider items like this when doing a big bore, as we're pulling more power out of an engine than was intended from the factory, so we want to make sure to cover our bases to ensure it's up for the task. As I built the engine up, it received all new bearings and seals along with some new clutch plates from Tusk, which is a good time to mention that by using my Rocky Mountain link in the description when you make purchases, I earn a commission at no extra cost to you, so that is a great way to support the channel along with entering to win this bike, also linked below. Brand new hardware from Fast Metric was used to fasten this engine together, and that beautiful nickel-plated hardware looks so good on this black motor. Now moving up in the engine, I of course used that 143cc BBR big bore kit, which included the cylinder, piston, and a high performance camshaft. The valves received new seals and springs, and everything else was within spec. And finally, I upgraded the intake manifold and carb, which we'll talk about in a second, and boom, I present you one badass pit bike engine. And with that, we've got a fully built and totally complete KLX 143 big bore pit bike engine ready to rip. Building this thing was a ton of fun. It's actually my first full 4-stroke engine build ever. I wouldn't have expected it to be on a pit bike, but here we are. I've also got a brand new Pro Circuit exhaust here, courtesy of Luke over at Fathead Racing. Luke, thank you so much for sponsoring the pipe on this build. As you guys probably know, Fathead Racing specializes in 2-stroke cylinder heads, but they're also now manufacturing gas caps for some models. These custom caps here will actually fit the first generation KLX 110s, but I will be using a 2022 KLX 110 tank for this build. So I miscommunicated that with Luke, thus we've got 2 custom gas caps to give away. If you have a KLX 110 with the original tank, I'll put the years on screen. Go ahead and leave me a comment saying you would like one of these custom gas caps with your Instagram handle, and I will message you on Instagram if you win one of these caps. So once again, shout out to Luke over at Fathead Racing. There's nothing quite like a Pro Circuit on a Kawasaki. Plus, DeCal Works is gonna get us all dialed in with a custom exhaust graphic that matches the color scheme of the rest of the bike. This thing's gonna look incredible. Now you may notice on this side of the motor, I have a new BBR intake manifold as well as a VM26 carburetor. More air, more fuel, more power. Someone actually left me a comment in the last episode suggesting this carburetor. I did some research. It was definitely the right move given the fact that we're going big bore with a pipe and everything. It will really open this thing up and get as much power as possible out of this motor. But now the question is, what do you guys think seeing this all together? Should I do some coatings on the manifold and the carb or leave them silver as is? Aside from maybe coating the carb and manifold, the only other things to be coated are the frame and shock spring. So let's talk about those. So like I said, I've got the 2022 tank here. It will bolt right onto the frame, no problem. Although for the updated plastics, I'm gonna add 2 small tabs to the frame so that they bolt up properly without having to use zip ties or anything like that. So my buddy Ben is gonna help me with that. We're gonna get this crusty old frame cleaned up and some tabs welded onto it. So that is the next task at hand. From there, the frame, shock spring, and maybe carb components will be going out for final coatings from Miles over at Canaan Lasers, and then we'll be fully ready to assemble everything else on the bike. So I am stoked on how this pit bike build is coming together so far. I'd like to give another enormous thank you to all of the companies that have supported this project. These builds would not be possible without having these great companies on board. So links to every company that has supported this project are down in the description below. And once again, if you would like a chance to win this beast when it's done, you can get yourself entered on my website by picking up some merch or getting some direct entries. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the continued support, and I will see you in episode 4.